Hey, Nathan.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
No, hey, Sam. What's up?
Hi. Oh, sorry. Hey, Sam. What's up?
Yeah, we're so out of practice on this. Hey, Nathan.
Hey.
Am
Oh,
I
what's
usually
going
there?
on?
So, made a critical mistake because we haven't podcast regularly in a while. And
Yeah.
at the very first moment, we tried to do this, logging into Riverside, everything's good. And then it immediately turns me to one pixel and my entire system crashes. I have a feeling that had a lot to do with the fact that I just hit upload on a wedding. So that was kind of going in the background. And I was thinking, oh, great, this is wonderful. I'll have an hour-long podcast and the wedding can upload and be done by the time Nathan and I are done. And I remembered, yeah, no,
But
terrible idea to
wait,
upload a full gallery while
don't
trying
you
to
have
podcast.
FiOS?
I do. No, I
Well, then uploading should be like
you would think,
20 minutes maximum.
you would
Like
think,
10 minutes
you would
for
think.
everything?
I mean, I can try and hit upload right now and we can see if,
No.
okay, yeah, I'd rather not edit this thing together. But it got me wondering two things I would like to talk about. One is from our when we were trying to podcast like a month ago. I have a note about money, and it'll probably jog your
Money.
memory bringing it up.
Money.
Your little deep dive into calculating hourly rates and all of this. I'd love to
Right.
talk about. But do you have any rituals, things that you do when you are done editing? You've hit upload on a gallery, other than the logistics of like delivery email, and all that stuff for the clients. Do you have any kind of like, I'm going to go have a Dr. Pepper now or something? I don't know.
No. I don't. I probably should.
Yeah.
I don't have I don't have a ritual. I think to myself, man, that took a lot longer than I expected.
Oh no, I'm having the opposite. I feel like every wedding I pump out now, it's like, wow, that really didn't take long. So
That's
that's, I
cool.
don't know.
No, it's fine. Lately, no, I think for me, I just, once I'm done, I'm just like, all right. And I think I instantly go into Lightroom and I'm like, all right, sweet. Now I can move mine into the delivered folder,
Yes.
and I can set it to yellow. I set my folder color to yellow, which indicates that it's a portfolio worthy
Huh.
folder.
Well, I'm always endlessly fascinated with everyone's different sort of recipes of color, star, flag rating
I'll tell you
usage.
mine right now. I'll tell
Hit
you
it.
right now.
Let's do it.
All right. So when I import a new shoot, I turn it to red. That means that I haven't done anything on it. It's in there. I need to do it. So red is like, hey, edit me. And then when I'm working on it, it stays red until I'm done culling. Once I'm done culling, it turns blue, and I know that I have culled that. I can stop there if I want and go do something else, and I know that when I come back, I'm ready to edit. And then usually when I'm done with editing, I'll turn it green so that I know that it's ready to upload. If I don't upload it right away, which usually I just upload it right away once I'm done culling, but sometimes I'll just be like, I'm done, I'm turning it green, and I'm going to walk away, and I'll come back um, and check in it later. And then once I'm done with, and then I have one other category, which is
Okay.
once I'm done with it and I deliver it. If I have not gotten paid yet, I put it, which is something that happens to me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I just get overly excited and I deliver everything without getting paid, which is not something anyone should do.
Wedding work too. Jeez.
Everything, yeah.
Oh, that's
I'm just
terrible.
so excited to get it out the door.
Yeah, but
I've been getting a lot better about getting paid for stuff before I deliver it. But if not, I put it into a waiting for payment and I turn it purple. So
okay.
that's ready. And then once I'm done with everything, I'll put it into the delivered. And if it's a portfolio worthy thing, I'll turn it
Nice.
yellow. And if
Okay.
not, I'll just leave it blank.
So yeah, you lean real heavy into the feature in Lightroom Classic where you can right click on a folder, anything when you're in library mode, and add a color label to the folder, just like
Thank
you
you, Sam
can.
Heard AI. This is a
Just,
really good summary of what I just said.
well, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize it's a feature because I don't think it actually came out until like a couple years ago, four or
That's true.
five at the most. And yeah, you can like label your folders. I do something totally different. I This is one reason I highly advocate for dated folders as like the main root folder where all your stuff goes, is that you see everything in sequential order. So just at a glance, for me, without even looking at any colors, I can see, oh, okay, it's been about a month since I've shot this thing, or 2 weeks. If it's an engagement session, I need to start. So I leave everything no color at all and just look at the date and see like, oh, is it coming around to when I need to deliver that thing? 2 weeks for a session, a month for a wedding. And if it is, then I run everything through. If I'm behind, by the way, if I'm late, longer than a month or whatever, that's when I color it red, because it's like, come on, go get this done, emergency. But then if I run it through AI culling and it's like ready to have my manual pass over that, I turn it to yellow because it's like in an in-between state.
Okay.
Yeah. And then once it's delivered and uploaded, I turn the folder to green. And that's it.
Nice.
So, but within the gallery itself, I do just straight up flag for everything that's ultimately going to be delivered to the wedding client, and then 1 star for bloggable, 2 star for like top 10 feature from that post, and then at the end of the year, I do 3 star for everything that's in my like end of year review, which I'm about to do maybe today or tomorrow.
Nice.
And then 4 star for like global, my entire career adding to portfolio. And then I still have a 5 star headroom for whatever else that I might want to add later. So
that's cool.
It's just a constant state for my star system of like refinement of, the better of the photos. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good way of doing it. My star system is just 1 star for the stuff that is good, like cool. It is like better than than just the flag. Like I also do just flags for everything. I don't like do any other type of flagging. And then nice. I do 1 star if it's like a portfolio worthy or blog worthy thing, and then yellow if I'm gonna put that image into my end of year portfolio.
The only thing that makes me nervous about leaning too much into the color tag for folders versus color for the individual pictures is that if you did lose your Lightroom catalog, if it corrupted or whatever, you didn't have a backup of the catalog itself, that work that you've done to organize and color code is also gone.
Interesting.
With photos, when you add a color label, it gets written, if you have XMP sidecar files, which I highly recommend you enable. I think that's under, let me find exactly where. Catalog settings.
I always do that.
Yeah, catalog settings, metadata, turn on automatically write changes to XMP. For anybody that doesn't know, wherever your raw files are, it will create a little sidecar text file with the same file name, .xmp, which has your edits written into it, your color coded metadata. It does not contain your flag, I'm pretty sure, because I think that's a unique.
It should keep your star rating though, right?
Star rating, yes, but not flag, which is really annoying. I guess the flag thing is unique to Lightroom and what it does. So you would lose your flags, I think. I have to test that again. But at the end of the day, all your hard work is probably in the actual edit tweaks. And so having the XMP sidecar files, if you did lose your catalog, at least you wouldn't lose your edit work. Right. It's a huge bonus, little backup there. But, you would lose the color coding and all your foldering stuff. But I don't know. When was the last time you lost an actual catalog or like,
like a corrupted catalog?
Yeah, like something. Same. It's been
maybe 2019 or something.
Yeah. People, a couple weeks ago, I did my little annual, hey, it's a new year, create a new Lightroom catalog for stuff that you're working on this year. And obviously people have infinite opinions about that. And many will jump in and say, oh no, I do 1 catalog per shoot or per session, like a new one every session to keep things
These
running
people
quickly
are
or whatever. Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm just kidding. If you're one of those people, I get it. But I have friends that do that. But to me, there's no reason.
Are they really your friends then? I don't.
Are you really a photographer if you do things really wrong?
Yeah.
No, I think it's fine if that's your way of keeping things organized in your head, then fine. But for me, it's so much simpler to have every single thing that I have shot in 1 year, all available, ready to look at just in case anything comes up, in case I
Yep.
want to look up anything.
Yep.
And the system, it used to be, I feel like it was like back in like 2015 or something, when like the Lightroom catalog would like slow down if you as
Sure.
towards the end of the year. Now, especially with the new Apple, the Apple Silicon chips, like they're just
It does
it's no big deal.
seem to be,
It's
yeah,
there's a
not nearly as big
little,
a
I mean,
deal.
it gets a little weighty. I've also had this really interesting problem where, I don't know if you've experienced this, where my closing Lightroom takes
Yes.
like
I
5
know.
minutes,
Yeah, I know.
and
I
I'm
know.
like, what?
That could be a plugin thing. I haven't like gone through and toggled
Yeah, it
off
could be.
QuickTime plugin or something like, but yeah, it's very frustrating
Yeah.
how long it takes just to shut things down. That used to be like a selling point in a lot of uh, people's decisions to go with Apple as a computer system,
Mm-hmm.
which also it takes forever now to shut down. But remember, it would be like, remember like Windows XP, Windows 95, it would take longer to shut the thing down than to boot it up sometimes. And it's
Yeah.
like, this is
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Apple was
That's
like the
right. Oh,
differentiated
that's
product where
right.
it would shut down. And it was like, oh, it was awesome. People seem to
I
forget
forgot
that.
about that. Yeah, there was this long, long shutdown time, and you'd be
Yep.
like, oh, should walk away.
There's a lot of subtle things that Apple influenced in such a powerful way that people forget about. Same with batteries. Like Apple really led the charge on
Mm-hmm.
consumer electronics coming with batteries pre-charged, like 75% or more. That used to not be a thing. And I noticed ever since COVID that batteries tend to come totally not charged. And I think there's
Yeah.
like a manufacturing, reason for that. Who knows? But one thing I was going to say is huge benefit to using the system the way that we do, with
Mm-hmm.
one master Lightroom catalog and then one catalog for the year that you're working, is that in Lightroom, the mobile app, I think we talked about this before, hopefully we have, but the mobile app itself is tapped into your cloud account on Adobe. So you add a photo in the Lightroom app, it gets synced across any other device that runs the Lightroom app, including the Lightroom non-classic app on your
Oh, really?
desktop. Yes. So what's cool is they let you choose one Lightroom Classic catalog to sync into that same cloud ecosystem. So my master Lightroom catalog in Classic, my like every other year except for the one that I'm currently in, that is the one that I have synced to my Lightroom cloud account. So every photo in Lightroom Classic, my master catalog, is also available in the Lightroom desktop app, not on Classic, and my mobile app. So
Cool.
it's amazing. And I just selectively sync all my, what we talked about earlier, all my 2-star photos. So ones that are like not just in my portfolio, but like really, really good. So I have all those at a glance, searchable right there in my mobile app. So I highly recommend people do that, but they only let you sync one Lightroom Classic catalog to that cloud thing.
Oh, yeah.
If you
That,
create a new catalog, it'll say, oh, you already have a cloud catalog. Do you want
right.
to replace it? And then people get confused and they just don't use the feature at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super useful if you actually understand that. But it's Adobe's fault for not rolling out that entire cloud thing very elegantly at
Right.
all.
At all.
But
Yeah.
the way I like to try and think about it myself and tell people is the Lightroom desktop app, the non-classic thing, just think about that as a giant mobile app. That's basically how you should think about it right now, unless they continue to roll out other features that are more classic like. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's really neat.
Because like you said, there's so many, especially in the current year. So the reason I don't mind having a separate catalog for the current year I'm working is that I always have that on me on my computer, right? So I don't want to have to take my 3 million image catalog with all the raw files and everything with me everywhere. But the current year, that's not a problem to keep on my machine. It's great. I always have it with me. And it's so easy when a random request from a planner or a couple like needs something tweaked or whatever, and it's been a couple weeks, or maybe an album tweak or whatever, boom, I can just pull it up and like we said, at a glance, like get to everything I've shot that year. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's really, 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 really nice. I'm very happy that I started doing that in like 2013 or something. It was like 2 years into when I was working.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the cutoff in, I think I have around 2010, 2011, where my organizational process was like my file names were always just the default camera file
Yep.
names, and my folders were like labeled with people's names as well as the date. And it's like a mess. Like it's really taxing for me to go through and make sure I'm finding my like best photos from those earlier years, because they're just, it's all kind of
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's bad news. My folders from that era are literally called like DCIM dash Susan and Mark dash blah blah blah. Like it would
Oh
be
my gosh.
just no consistency. And the more I think about and work in like a creative industry, the more I feel like one of the main and most important and main differentiating factors between a professional and a hobbyist is having a solid workflow, like your session management. This is something I learned early on with music recording. Is like, okay, you can be really, really, really good at mixing, but what you need to be is really good at mixing and managing the session, like keeping things tightly labeled, having a sense of organization of like what track goes on top. Is it your drums? Okay, is it a consistent order that you're always in? Have you labeled the microphone that you use, or like the plug-in chain, so that when the changes inevitably come, you can quickly like snap in and out of things. Like session management from that is exactly how I think about managing all this stuff in Lightroom in terms of how things are organized.
Totally.
The recall rate of the recallability of being able to just like jump right into what you need to change and get it done consistently is just so important. And takes a while to develop those things, because a lot of people start out with like being just obsessed with the literal craft of photography. And so secondly or thirdly comes all the like discipline in terms of keeping things organized and in a professional way. And it's really hard to work your way out of that. Once you're like used to doing things a certain way, it makes sense for your brain, but it's like, no, it really needs to make sense for anybody sitting down and like looking at your stuff. That's a good litmus test. If it's not the right test for it. Where somebody else could sit down and like actually understand what's happening, looking at your Lightroom catalog. That's a really strong signal that you're doing things right. Same with your backup system, but we don't need to get into that. Everyone's got an opinion.
No backups ever.
Right.
Live life on the end.
But as we've started playing around with more video and stuff, I have noticed I'm making a lot of the same mistakes that I did early on in photography, where it's like, well, the video is delivered. I don't really need to keep the edit session from this, do I? Like, I don't need to back up any of that. It's like, wait a second. Like, actually, I probably should. Yeah.
What if you get an edit request? And then you have to. I did that once as well, where I was like, this was for a video project, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And it was not a wedding video. It was like it was just like some interviews or something. And I was done with it and I delivered it. And I was like, man, that was so good. I edited this perfectly. And 2 weeks later, and I like somehow got rid of the project or lost it or something. And I was like, it doesn't matter because it's done. And 2 weeks later, the client came back and was like, hey, we want to add this one thing to it. And I was like, oh, one thing? I was like, oh no. I was like, I have to do the entire edit again. I knew sort of how to do it, but it was a nightmare. It took me a full day where it could have taken me 5 minutes to do. Yeah. So it is important to, in any creative industry, whether it's video or photo or audio, to have a really good process and a good method of making sure that you know how to get to things really quickly. That I fully agree. That's like the backup or the differentiator between professionals.
I think you can literally think of it operationally like the same way as I think a lot more people can probably relate to knowing your camera, right? So if by the time you jump into your edits or whatever you're working on, whether it's you're currently working on it or it's an edit request that somebody's like a month later you need to get into, if for you to get back into the flow and in the zone of what needs to change and where and how it's categorized and organized or whatever, if that takes you 15 minutes to get into every single time, that's just sucking away mental resources from like the fun creative part of what you can do. And it's like the exact same thing as if you are given a new camera body and it's not customized for your setup, right? Like you're now, even if it's just a few minutes, if you're hitting that little brick wall because that button isn't set up the way that you normally have it, boom, you are losing resources for you to like devote to like the more creative fun aspects, or like the nuance and detail of like what's the light doing and like the jokes you're making with the couple or whatever. And it's the same thing when you're sitting down at your computer. If it takes you, like you said, a day to get something out, but then by the time you're actually in the state that you need to start making those changes, you're probably rushing through it a little bit. You're a little less excited to like.
That's what I was about to say, was that it has knock-on effects. I notice this most especially when I'm trying to do audio stuff, to record music.
Yes.
And you and I are well versed in the getting way into like fixing something before we record instead of just sitting down and recording. Because it has a knock-on effect of like, okay, it took was like 30 minutes for us to get set up, but like now we're ready, and like hold on, let me tweak this one other thing, and like, but then you're already not quite in that zone of like, I want to make music, I want to like, I'm just that's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
And your headspace has been sort of like messed with. So
yeah, I mean, it's two fundamentally different parts of your brain.
Yeah.
That's the fascinating part about a lot of creative stuff nowadays, is that it's the technical aspect of plugins and settings and drivers and everything else. But that is like the opposite mindset you actually want to be in when you're doing the craft.
Right.
You want all of that to just like float into the background. It's exactly why I love my little Insta360 camera that I wear around my sling strap, because that's an extra technical layer that, adding behind the scenes video to stuff for Instagram Reels or whatever. I was all over the place with like, okay, hot shoe mounted stuff, maybe something mounted on a shoulder, or like, where can I put this camera so that all I have to do is remember to hit record and I don't have to think about anything else, where I'm pointing at battery life as little as I can possibly get away with, like thinking about, and that Insta360 camera is wonderful because I can just, and by the way, the version 4 it's the Insta360 1X4 is the model name. Battery life on that is amazing. It's a little bit larger of a device, but can rubber band it to your shoulder sling strap like you and I use. And it just captures everything no matter what your angle. Sometimes awesome. My camera's in the way or whatever, but it's just a wonderful way for video to be captured and still kind of disappear into the background of my actual focus, mental focus. Yeah. But that's everything, right? It's not just, it doesn't have to be something that technical. I mean, we've talked about before why we don't use lens caps and hoods, because again, there's like this little layer. It's not a technical thing, but it's a layer of friction where it's like
I just want to pick up the camera and I just want to shoot.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't want to like take off a lens cap,
especially with EVFs now. Like you got a problem with contrast because the sun is hitting your lens. Like you can use your hand. There's nothing special in the design of the lens hood that it does some magical thing. It's literally just blocking the light as much as possible without vignetting and being in the view of the field of view of the lens. So you really want to think through all that stuff, especially things that are like a little bit of a nag. Which I have to say, I'm a bit disappointed. I'm keeping the Canon R1 to segue just a bit because it's a new body I've been using, because the autofocus is really, really, really great and like a notable improvement compared to the R3. But there's so many weird little things in Canon software, the way that they've just operationally locked things in for photographers, that it still gets in my way more than my Nikon ZFs do. And it's disappointing because it feels like
what?
I don't know. It'll just randomly jump back into auto ISO after being in manual.
What is that?
Like, exactly. Like, what is that? And it's hard.
You set it to auto ISO and then you move to manual ISO, and then it will reset itself back if you don't do it the correct way.
Yes, it's silly. Canon's always been a little confused about auto ISO. Nikon's always had a better implementation of it, which is why I was so excited to jump to mirrorless, because the EOS R was the first Canon body where auto ISO worked similar-ish to how Nikon did, but it's still weird. There's still weird things. So it's really hard to just like jump. It's always a small thing, kind of like, I mean, that sounds like a big deal when you say it out loud, but it's always like something like that I, if I need to just keep a running list, and I guarantee I could have a dozen, but it's hard to surface when I'm not in the moment shooting, what it is. But it's stuff like that. And they're like making it worse for themselves, right? So like, no camera since the R5 allows you to do in camera multiple exposure, where it gives you the raw file. But more complex than that, if you want to choose an image earlier on the memory card to make a double exposure with, you have to first convert that raw file to a JPEG, then select that JPEG to multiple expose on top.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is so convoluted.
It's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Silly. I don't know what's going on, but they're like adding complexity where, things are supposed to get easier. So we'll see where all that leads. But the R1 is a cool camera. What are you shooting with now? Just, it's been a while, I think, since we've talked about gear. So
it's been a while. I am still shooting with 2 R6s, Mark 1s.
Oh, great. Yeah. So, I mean, I would honestly stick with those for as long as you can. The autofocus is wonderful. Dynamic range is great. The high ISO taps out a little early, I think, but it's still way more than most you would ever need. Yeah. And it's one of the last ones, along with the R5, that does in-camera multiple exposure as exactly you would expect it to. So stick with that.
It's a good camera. My gripes are things that podcast listeners have always have heard me complain about before, which is like the hot shoe mount is garbage, and breaks, and then the general problem I would have with any Canon camera is that the exposure preview lies to you, which is not fun.
There's another example of it, is depending on how bright you're shooting, right? Like you said, the depth of field or the depth of field preview plus exposure preview, whatever they call it. I can't even remember, because they also changed the names of things.
Well, it is exposure preview is a setting, but the depth of field preview is not connected to that at all.
It is on the R3 and the R1.
No, on the R3. I don't know about the R1, but for the R3, it was still doing it. It wasn't doing it as consistently, but it was doing it.
That's the thing. But there's a setting for it, and it will not do it in certain brightness of light. Right. So it's silly. It's silly. So silly.
It's silly. It makes me want to go back to Nikon. Because, it literally I'm sitting here with my Nikon 58 1.4G. I have not sold it. It is still behind me in that pile, and I want to use it. So Canon is pushing me away.
That ZF is calling your name, I feel. But I will say, having shot now both systems back and forth for over a year, the colors on Canon, I can always tell in editing when I've jumped, and I prefer the Canon colors, like, for sure. It's very, very frustrating but that's just the reality for me. I prefer the Canon colors. Yeah. It's and when everything you talk about operationally, it's easy to complain and whatever, but the most important thing at the end of the day are the things you cannot edit your way out of. And the color pipeline through the sensor to whatever raw file profile you're using, camera calibration profile you're using in Lightroom, like, you can't change the core colors. People think that they can get stuff to match, and you might be able to on a one-off photo comparing one to the next, but across an entire gallery of stuff, it's just not practical to get like Nikon colors to match Canon colors. They're just fundamentally, it's a different sensor. It's a different color pipeline that's sent through to the raw file. So it's a bummer, but I would love if I could just throw my R3 or R1 sensor in my ZF. I would probably not shoot with the R1 or R3 bodies, but here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah. So, do you remember exactly what we wanted to jump into? It was more
Yeah.
something that it seemed like you had thought through than I ever have when it relates to calculating kind of your hourly rate or
Uh-huh.
your overall. I don't know. You want to
All right.
extrapolate?
So, yeah, I was a couple of years ago, I was trying to figure out how to like make more money or be more efficient with my, with what I was bringing in. Because I had never really thought about, I mean, I've been like, I'm charging, I'm figuring out on the fly, like what to charge per hour, what to charge for weddings. And it's this question that you see all over the internet, all over everything is like, how much do you charge for a wedding? And people are just like, they're throwing out numbers. They don't know. You don't know. I don't know. Okay. We're just throwing out, this is what I charge. This is, people will say like, this is like based on my, market. This has, been successful for me. Many people haven't actually thought about it though. What that actually entails, and what it actually entails is a cost of doing business calculator. So I didn't know about that this even existed until the person that I was working with was like, hey, have you ever thought about like using a cost of business calculator? And I was like, what's that? And basically what you do is, I'm sure a lot of people do know what a cost of doing business calculator is, but I didn't. So I'm going to explain it now, which is
Okay.
basically you put in how much money you want to make, and you put in you put in your expenses and stuff, and it spits out a number of like what you should charge. So that's the super super simple way of saying it. But going into a little bit more detail, there is a website, and Sam, I encourage you to check it out right now, called if you just search photography cost of doing business calculator, it's probably the first one, National Press Photographers Association.
Okay.
And this is mainly it's geared towards photojournalists. So me and you understand this pretty well, but it applies to wedding photography just as easily. And so what you do, if you go to this website, and if you're listening now, if you have the ability to check this out, I'd encourage you to do it. nppA.org / business cost calculator. It'll come to a website with a bunch of forms in it. What you want to do is you put in your desired income after expenses. Let's say I want to make $100,000 this year. Okay. After all my expenses and after everything. So you just put that in $100,000 per year. You can also put in how much money you're getting from other sources, not photography. So let's say I make 10 grand doing other random stuff like recording audio or video or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then the crazy part is you put in your expected assignment days per year. So this is very, photojournalism style, but essentially what it means is how many days per year are you able to get out the door and go to a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So put that in. And what I did was I just went into my Lightroom catalog for the year and literally just added up how many folders there are. Literally, like, and
Nice.
that's how simple it was. And I realized I'm getting out the door, and you kind of have to do it a little bit differently than that for somebody like me who's taking like 7 pictures of Sadie every day.
Yeah.
But
You blend your. Oh, that's a different topic. Okay. Yeah.
a different topic. But I'm just bringing everything in. So what I realized, and I think this was in like 2019 or something, what I realized is I was pretty much getting out the door like 50 days a year.
Okay.
That
Nice.
was basically what I was doing. Like, and what I realized is I'm like, and if you want to be doing more than that, then you can put in more. So let's say out of a given year, there's 365 days. How many of those days can you realistically be out the door shooting? Let's call it 80.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So 80 days per year. And then what you do is you put in your annual expenses, what you're, this is super easy to do if you keep good records, if you budget, or if you can just go into your tax return and just see how much money you spent on everything. Let's say $1,000 for your studio here, $1,000 here, computer hardware and software. Let's call that 3,000. Just a bunch of stuff. You just toss it in. Equipment, service, and repairs, 1,200 a year. Web hosting, you have to put in all this stuff, $600. Subscriptions, I don't know, let's call it $2,000 a year. And basically you just kind of toss in everything. Business insurance,
Yep.
accounting services, whatever you do, accounting and promotion, like $600, let's call it $50 a month. Postage, you're going down this list and you're putting everything in.
Yep. I like it.
And at the end,
very, very thorough.
It's very thorough. And so what you realize at the end of the day is, I just kind of threw this together. Let's put in another few things. Travel. Okay. Few expenses. What I realized at the end of the year is, here, hold on. Let me just put in a few more things while we're talking. $2,000 from food. And basically what you get is it'll give you a number, and what that number is, it'll be your total annual expenses. So for what I put in is like 17,500. Okay. This is a total spitball. I think last time I looked at it, was more like $30,000 a year to basically run my business.
Okay.
So
reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's call it, for this one, it's saying that I'm just like an amateur photographer. I'm out there, I'm doing it. I really want to make 100,000. I can work 80 days a year, and I only have $17,500 in expenses. That means that every day, I need to make, it'll give you expected pay per assignment day, which is incredible. It'll give you, for me, it means $1,300 a day. So
okay,
what that all means in layman's terms is, if you want to make $100,000 per year, if that's how much you need to make for your family, for your life,
mm-hmm.
and you can only work 80 days per year, then you need to charge $1,300 every time you walk out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Or the way I like to look at it, being a wedding photographer, you need to average $1,300 a day every time you get out the door. So for me, what I realized is, with all my expenses and on the calculator that I did, for what I wanted to make and for what my expenses were, it was $1,000 per shoot. Okay. And what that means is, it gives me the thought process of, if I'm leaving my house, I need to come back with $1,000. You know, yep. I need, and
I remember Nessa saying this, like, back in the day, like, I can't leave the house for less than $1,000. I remember thinking, like, what? That's a weird thing to say out loud, because if you're not a freelance self-employed person, that doesn't compute. That's like,
right.
That doesn't make any sense until you do the math. Yes.
But if you're a photographer and you're working for yourself, that number, that should start to sink in pretty quickly what that entails, which means that if you are a wedding photographer and all you're doing is weddings, then you don't need $1,000 every time you get out the door. You need $5,000 every
weekish
week
or whatever. Yeah.
Right. You need to be doing a wedding every week. Or you need to, and so if you're like, oh, well, and you look at your pricing and you're like, well, I'm charging $200 an hour. You're like, that's just not enough. I need to be like marketing myself in such a way that I'm working a minimum of 5 hours, for all my shoots. Or I need to up my rates so that I can get to the number that I want to get to. So that's the overall thought process behind that.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's such a tricky thing because, it's a good, I would say, like, baseline sort of relative guide to think about things against. But
yes.
I see all the time where people are like, oh, here's my rate for this shoot. And then they don't get booked. And so they now have a Saturday free, which means they've got like 2 weeks of open dates, unless they fill in weekdays with, sessions or some other kind of work. And at the end of the day, you really, really need to consider and weigh whether it's actually better to go ahead and earn that $500 because or whatever the amount is. Like maybe their budget's way off from what it's like half of what this business calculator says you need to make.
Right.
But if it's a Tuesday and you're not doing anything else, that's $500 you wouldn't have otherwise. Like go do
Correct.
it. So it's
right. And for wedding photographers like us that also do other stuff, the fact that you have a $5,000 wedding one week and then a $2,000 wedding the next week, you can, that second week you can be like, oh yeah, there's a job that like I like to do, I do a lot of work with like like local artists just documenting their stuff, and I just charge them like $450 like and it's doable for them. It's doable for me. And what it is like I can pepper that stuff in because that's still averaging the 1,000 a shoot. If I do a shoot for $500 and I do another one for $1,500, it works out.
It does. But it's also like a very unique situation every time, I feel like, because you don't want to, in a way, it'd be unfair for you to charge somebody one rate and then another person another. Right. But also a lot of it's just down to your availability. If you have no bookings, then you need to lower your rates until you're starting to get bookings, and then you can trend upward. And one thing I did, I swear, this is still one of the best business decisions I ever made in my business, was add to my contact form like 5 years ago, budget. And I used to really be uncomfortable about that because I remember my formative years looking at other photographers and I would see like budget. Ooh, that's like gross, because now you're just going to charge a little more than what people always fill out maybe, or like why even bother asking? Because isn't your pricing the same for everybody? Blah, blah, blah. There's lots of reasons you could look at the field of budget and be turned off by it, but it's optional. I don't go into any elaboration of like most clients spend an average of $17,000 with me, or anything like that. It just says budget, and it's totally optional. But like half the time people fill in their budget, and sometimes it's way off base and sometimes it's right in line with what the average is. But what I've been able to do is, especially using, some of the LLM tools, is just dump the whole Excel spreadsheet of what everybody's filled out over the past years and see the exact average of what most people's budgets are. And again, there's outliers of people that are like $1,000 budget for an entire wedding day, and other people that are like $20,000 budget for an entire wedding day. And like those just become a wash. You get rid of those, but you look at the ones that orbit around some pattern, and boom, you've got a good guide. You don't have to charge that amount, but this is like market feedback for you to know what kinds of clients and budget sized weddings your work is attracting, because not every style and every area, and there's so many different variables that go into aligning what you want to make in your wedding work with the clients that actually have that money to give you. Right. That anyway, it's so helpful to have a guide so that you're not way off base. If you've only been shooting 3 or 4 years and you're expecting to make $8,000 a client, but 25% of the time they put in their budget, it's $3,000. There's a huge disconnect you need to think about fixing. More than just your experience, right? It could be anything, but it's one of my like just favorite thing. And the cool thing about it is once you've got enough years of data, you can probably take that question off if it has been sort of like I don't know why I want to ask that, because I want to, everyone's budget's different or for whatever reason, you can take it off and just add it again, maybe for a few months next year or something like that. It doesn't have to be there all the time, but you do want a couple years worth of data so you can start to see trend lines and whatnot.
Yeah. In my opinion. I like having the budget question in there because sometimes I'll get, as I've been a few times over the last year where I've gotten somebody who I'm like, what's your photography budget? And they put in, like something like 3,800, and I send them back my rates and they're like, the package we want to go with is 4,200.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can be like, okay, what ways can we come towards each other so that I don't lose this client? So like, you know,
That
I
too.
can,
Yep.
like, I've done that a few times where I've been like, hey, your budget's really low. Like, I, I'd love to work with you anyway, but like, let's work together. Let's reduce the hours here. Let me just bump my rate down just like a little bit if it's just a little too far out of your range. We can we have a
Totally.
little bit of
That's valid. I don't even address it.
leeway.
Half the time I don't even look when I reply to the inquiry. I just reply to everybody the same.
Sure,
But I
same.
will notice sometimes that, like you said, the budget is actually way off. Like maybe they're just inquiring for a session. This happens a lot, and people are like, "Oh, our budget's $600." I'm like, "Well, I started 1250, so I'll just send that, and people will still just book me because they just put in a number that they think they have, but they maybe they've done some more research, or they ended up just not knowing what to put, so they just put something. Who knows why? But that quite often,
what the knot told them to put.
Exactly. You know? Quite often, people will just come around, and it's not an issue at all. But it does give you some, aside from just trying to emulate what you see other photographers doing in the market, which is a terrible approach in my opinion, because every market is so different. It really is like real estate in terms of pricing for wedding photography, right? Like everybody knows that to buy a 1,500 square foot house in Southern California is just another planet of cost and expense and things to think about than buying a 1,500 square foot row home in Baltimore, right? It's just totally different. And in my opinion, wedding photography is very, very similar to that. And it's frustrating because you see people say like, "Oh yeah, I book starting $10,000." It's like, okay, yeah, but you live in Southern California and like perhaps the richest place ever.
Cost
and
of doing business calculator.
Exactly.
Put in how much
their mortgage is $8,000 a month. Right. So
and you instantly realize, you have to charge that much. Or you can go to, I don't know, Tulsa and be like, how much, it's like, it's going to be way less. And, and people charging like $2,000 a wedding or something like that is not going to be out of the question because it's fine. That's how much it costs to do it out there.
And it's very frustrating with so many online platforms because it doesn't, there's like a certain degree of anonymity where people don't want to talk about where they're from or what they're doing, just like the raw numbers. And there's just so much of a mixture in terms of discussion online of people being from other countries, right? Just culturally. I mean, you and I both have a lot of friends in Europe, and it's just, again, it's like a totally different planet in terms of expectations of what normal everyday people value and think and are able to spend for photography coverage. It's just very different than in the US. So it's like totally detached from your capabilities and skills. There's like a fundamentally different starting point that people need to think about these things. And it's so easy to be frustrated or feel, I think, you're not doing things in the right way when, the things that tend to surface more regularly in terms of visibility are the cases where people are like, I started $8,000 a wedding or $10,000 a wedding. It's like, oh, geez, I've been doing this like 20 years now. Maybe I should be at that rate too. And it's like, okay, no, there's so many other things.
Right. And that I think that's where I think doing a cost of business calculator can help you be like, wait a minute, let's not get emotional about this. Let's put in the numbers. Let's see how much I actually need to make. And you can have a real number to look at where you can be like, oh, I'm actually fine. In fact, I could stand to work less days and charge more, or I could work, or I'm not working enough. I'm going to work more days and I'm going to reduce my rates a little bit so that I can work more. And, and maybe you just want to be out there a little more. But at the end of the day, don't just hopping onto Reddit and being like, what do you guys charge? And like freaking out that you're like too low or too high. That's making an emotional, judgment. You need to get in there, be clinical about it, be realistic, and figure out how much you need to charge for your own life.
Yep. That's the other thing is, somebody, may have 4 kids and
Yeah.
be the sole provider of the revenue in their family. Like they're going to have a completely different mindset and
Yeah.
perspective about what they can charge and what's worth their time or not, and all that other stuff that goes into it. So it
Right.
really is
I mean,
a very personal kind of
yeah,
decision.
me and Abby before, like after we had, it was, oh yeah, it was after we had Say. So it was probably 3 years ago that I did this, originally did my cost of business calculator, where we had like a discussion where it's like, we're just not bringing in enough. Like she's working, I'm working, but it's not enough. And so so that's when I kind of went in and was like, oh, I just looking at the real numbers from last tax year, I'm realizing I am undercharging for what I'm doing, and in order for me, like I think I was at 250, or I think it was like a 300 an hour or something. I was like, I need to be up. So over the last 2 years, I bumped up to 350 and then 400 an hour for just event work, and I've been really much more I've been much more professional and confident about the rates that I'm charging to, especially like new non-wedding clients, um, where they're like, I can really be realistic and say, no, this is not, your budget is too low. I need to charge this or I can't come out. Um, or I can be like, hey, it's a slow month. Like I need to be working for anything, you know? So I'll do it even, but in the back of my head, I know how much money I need to average because I've done actual personal research on it instead of
Mm-hmm.
just being like, what, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Charge me, buy me a beer. Um, you know? Um, so yeah, I think that it's just really nice mentally to like know what feel much more like professional about what you're charging.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it comes in.
It's never ceases to amaze me how beneficial it is for me to essentially delude myself into thinking that a lot of the policies or decisions I make as a business are being handed down from somebody that's not me. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of times there's something where I'm like, gosh, I don't have to charge for this. Like, I don't care. I want to shoot whatever it is. Like, I don't, gosh. But then I think like, no, if I work for a business and the boss is like, oh, here's our rate is $1,000. Like it's what it is. Ignore them if it's not going to work out, then that's sometimes what you have to do. I'm trying to think of a good example of this. Okay, so one that a lot of people I see, especially since data online is getting very, very, very cheap. A lot of people just go for the unlimited plans on like gallery hosts and whatnot. But 5, 6, 8 years later, you'll get the client who's like, "Hey, we lost our link. We don't have our photos downloaded. Can we have those again?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's tempting to be like, especially if you're a hobbyist and you just kind of like do this on the side and the money really doesn't matter to you. Just, oh yeah, your gallery's still online. Here's the link. Like I have unlimited storage on PickTime or whatever it is. It doesn't cost me anything. Why would I charge them for that? It's like, nah, well, you've done a lot of heavy lifting to make sure and save those photos for people. There's so much actual value in that. There should never be the expectation from a client that you're going to forever have their photos no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's tempting in their first few years to think that you will, but you almost certainly won't once you've like switched platforms once or twice, or, you're 5 years removed from doing photography at all. Like I know many wedding photographers that haven't touched a camera in years that were actively shooting when I got started. Right. So there should be no expectation of that, but you've been able to still say, hey, I've still got the photos, it's $250. That's an arbitrary, completely randomly made up number. But if you just envision in your head that like, no, this is just the company policy. I'm the maker of that policy, but we're not going to address that fact.
Right.
Here it is. Like that's sometimes the way you just have to like think about things. Again, the self-employed, and 9 times out of 10, like clients won't even, I mean, depending on what the amount is, they might be annoyed and not go through with it. But the perspective isn't going to be of judgment and like, why are you charging for this? You don't have to. I know that. They don't know that. They, like anything. Think of the last time you bought something from a small business or an artist, maybe even that's like obviously self-employed at a stall somewhere. And yeah, you might look at their their work or whatever it is they're selling and say like, oh, that's too expensive for me. But you're not sitting there judging them, wondering why they're not willing to haggle with you, right?
Right.
No, you're just like, it's too expensive for me, or no, this is great. I want this thing.
Right.
I'll buy it. Here's the rate. So it's a little mental game I'm constantly playing with myself when it's like,
that's a good game to play.
Yeah. Yeah. But in a way, having a business that's not tied to your name, I think early on it does buy you a lot of trust equity, if that's the right phrase for it, where people see your name and know they're booking you, and it's easier, I think, to get conversions when it's your name on the business. But I do think longer term, it's actually maybe better to have like an umbrella sort of studio, even if it's just a studio of one person still.
Right.
It gives you more flexibility in terms of just being an entity versus.
I think so too. I've toyed for a long time with like, do I change my like name so that it's, what's Nathan Mitch Photography? Like, who cares? It could be cool if it was.
I've thought about making like 5 other wedding businesses, use all my same photos, just different categories and different portfolios and like totally different branding. And like, it's all still me, but I cover like a huge spectrum of the industry in terms of price points and everything. I've thought about that a lot, but I'm just too lazy.
I'm thinking now about just doing sort of like the best of both worlds and calling myself the Nathan Mitchell Photography Corporation.
That's awesome. Doesn't Taylor Jackson have that? I think he's like Taylor Jackson Media or something.
Oh yeah, maybe that's good. Jackson Media.
Yeah, it's funny. But again, it's something where it does, I think, it's such a weird industry because our clients are always changing, right? We're always getting a new wave of generation and like culture shifts and all of this, but we stay the same as photographers, right? Or we get older, but like our approach and perspective on the world stays the same, but our clients are always like new. We're not getting the same clients over and over unless we're doing family sessions for them. And that's a totally different topic, but you kind of have to be aware of the fact that I'm assuming most of the clients that hire you have not become aware of what you're all about and who you are and what your experience is. And, unless it's maybe been in the past couple months since they've gotten engaged. And so it's really tough to get a perspective of how you're coming across to people, and using your name is a nice comforting, like, oh, we know who this person is. Yeah. We know who's showing up to actually shoot our wedding.
Yeah. I think it lends a little bit to the credibility, at least in wedding photography, because a lot of times I'll say in a client meeting before they book that I'm like, your photographer is somebody you need to trust, and like on some level, but above all, trust to be where they're going to be on time and do their job really well. So having just your name attached to it is important.
I wish the average age of clients was old enough that they will had to book an independent contractor or two to just like do work on their house or something. That's like probably not something they've done if they're in their late 20s, but it's like, imagine trying to get an independent contractor to come like work on something on your house, and they need to dedicate to showing up at the exact right time a year in advance. Like that would literally never happen.
Yeah.
Like ever.
Dude, it was Liam, Liam, Good Visuals, had a really great quote that I posted on my Insta the other day, where he was like, imagine if people are like, why do you charge so much for a wedding? It's like, well, imagine if you had to hire somebody, you had to be, if your boss said you had to be on time to a wedding, to a place 1 year in advance, that you had to work for 8 hours, and every single second of that you had to be at absolute top professionalism, at the top of your creative game, doing the best work of your life.
Yeah.
And that's it. 8 hours a year in advance. Like, then it kind of starts making sense.
Yeah. It does.
I really like that.
But again, it's something that it's tough when your clients, they're always new. They're always doing this for the first time. So it's like, and so much about what their friends have gone through and what's popular in social media and whatnot shapes their perception of what's normal. And that can get way out of whack real fast. This is one reason I'm so excited for the TikTok ban, because that is the number one most real and direct platform of social media that I actually saw in a shockingly short amount of time, real life impact of something on a platform influencing people's ideas and of what was normal. And it wasn't always a bad thing, but out of nowhere, I was like, why is everybody doing this dance where everybody leaves and it's just the couple by themselves at the end of the night? It's like, oh, like one TikTok went ultra viral. And within like 2 months, everybody just wanted to do that thing. And that happened like 5 or 6 times with things that now nobody does anymore, because it's like the nature of social media. Things have already evolved into like other things, but TikTok is the only one where I could like point to and say like, holy crap, everybody's just like plugged in this way that, imagine if it wasn't something as innocuous as like a wedding thing, right? That's scary to think about. We don't need to talk through it, but I am
don't even want to think about it. Am I right?
But I am
TikTok, right?
I'm excited. Anyway, we're almost at, we're a little over an hour. What else you got
over time?
What else do you have going on in life? You going to DC for the inauguration? It's going to be like 12 degrees.
Remember when we we camped out at the under desks at the National Press Club for Obama's inauguration?
I don't.
Do you remember that?
I wasn't there.
Me and you and I think Greg slept under desks in the National Press Club.
Don't remember this.
In 2000, I think it was 12, I guess, right?
That would have been 08. No, his
08?
first inauguration? Second one.
I think it was his first.
That would be 08 then.
Okay, 08. Well, there we go. Anyway, we were under the desk, and we woke up in the morning, and we tried to get past the barricades to get into the inauguration. I think I don't remember if we did.
That I'm guessing is why I don't remember, because I certainly don't remember seeing like the mall with the crowds or the stage setup or anything
everywhere.
I remember tons of traffic everywhere. But I don't remember that view of like somebody must have not gotten through the barricades. I don't remember sleeping over at all. That's hilarious. Wow.
Yeah,
I just remember walking around.
I want to go, but like I don't want to deal with traffic and I don't want to deal with the metro. Let's just go into the National Press Club and just sleep there.
Oh man. That freaks me out that I can't actually remember doing that. But I do remember like the week or two leading up to it being extremely angry with all the gates going up and buses coming through and being like, this is crazy. Get out of my way. It's my city. Get out of here. It was a wild attendance, but yeah, no desire to go to the one this year. Plus it is literally going to be like single digits. So let's
no thanks.
Hunker down. I've got a wedding on Sunday actually in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Hoping for the snow, hoping for the nice white fluffy snow. We'll see.
Let's see. I want snow. The 20th is Monday, right? Yeah. So this weekend, what are you doing other than shooting wedding?
Shooting weddings. I'm working on my, I just got back from a vacation where I literally like took vacation and didn't do much at all, which was a weird feeling. So I've been trying to like get back into the daily routine of waking up and getting work done as early as possible in the day, including, just coding together this wonderful workflow that I've developed and trying to come up with a way to share it with other photographers that aren't me so that they can also leverage it, where you literally just insert a memory card, everything gets culled, edited, ready in a folder for you within 30 minutes, so you can jump in right to like the manual pass over all the AI doing kind of the equalization of what most people appreciate it for. It's a tricky thing to scale anything out to be more than just like this works for me, but having fun with it, and
I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Hopefully, if nothing else, I'm happy to just share the code, which I've already done on my Patreon, but I want to make it, an app so that it's more or less just identify the folder you want to monitor. Here's your account credential information. Boom, you're done. But I am quite surprised with how easy it was to code the duplicate detection part of this, where I'm getting results like right in the same ballpark as Aftershoot and Pixel, Filter Pixel, and there's like a few other culling AI apps that, I'm like right in the same ballpark in terms of good AI choices as all of them. And I'm like, this is crazy because it only took me like 2 weeks by myself, and it's not as good, but I haven't even. I guarantee I can get there. So what would be nice is to just make that freely available for people on my Patreon or something. No subscription or anything, but we'll see. I'm going to work on it. Yeah.
Nice. And what are you doing on Saturday?
Oh, I guess you and I are doing some music stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that why you? Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
I was just about to ask what you're up to, and then you could have been like.
Yeah, but you didn't. You just talked about coding the whole time.
Sorry.
Always talking about yourself.
I'm sorry.
I'm over here drinking Rambler. By the way, have you ever tried the Ramble?
No. Lemon lime sparkling water? Never heard of it.
This is Texas limestone filtered Rambler sparkling water. It's the best sparkling water.
Texas has some really good sparkling water. Is Waterloo the one from there as well? There's like 1 or 2 brands from Texas. Every time I'm there,
I don't know. I'm going to try some right now.
And there's definitely...
It's good. It's definitely a buy.
Is this a Whole Foods thing? Where do you find it?
Mom's. I don't know. I think it's like... It's at a good store that sells good water.
Okay.
So, good luck finding it.
I like it. Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap up delivering this wedding and get editing on this podcast, which I hope we still have listeners.
And that reminds me that I finished, edited, and delivered a wedding and a newborn session yesterday and have not notified anyone that I did that. So I should probably send an email to those
Change
clients.
those colors. Let's get that out of purple.
Let's get it out.
Oh, crap.
Switching to
There's
yellow.
Something else I was going to ask you, but I guess we're good. All right. Well.
Okay, well, I'll talk to you later. Goodbye, Sam.